Listen carefully, because what I'm about to say might hit closer to home than you expect. You've tried everything: setting boundaries, cutting people off, walking away, hoping that somehow, finally, you'd find peace. But here's the hard truth no one talks about. Toxic people aren't the real problem. You could block their number, you could move to another city, you could avoid them for years, but deep down, you'd still feel trapped. Why? Because they don't live in your phone. They don't live in your neighborhood, they live in your mind. And the only reason they have power is because you keep giving it to them. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men to ever walk this earth, said it perfectly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. In this video, I'm going to show you how to stop letting toxic people control your thoughts, your emotions, and your life. Not by running, not by avoiding them, but by becoming someone they can't touch anymore. Number 1, the common mistake people make. You've been told that the best way to deal with toxic people is to cut them off. Walk away, block their number, move on, and never look back. And let's be honest, sometimes that feels like the only option left. You tell yourself, if I just create enough distance, I'll finally feel free. I'll finally have peace. But let me ask you something. How's that been working for you? Because if you're anything like most people, you've probably already noticed something strange. You cut one person off, and then another shows up. You leave one job to get away from the drama, and somehow the same type of person shows up at the next one. You stop talking to one family member, but then another one starts playing the same mind games. And suddenly you realize something you didn't want to admit. It keeps happening. You start to wonder if you're just unlucky, if you're somehow attracting these people without realizing it, if the universe is against you. But here's the truth, and you might not like hearing this. The problem isn't just the people. The problem is how you've been trained to respond to them. Cutting someone off might feel like a solution, but all you've really done is treat the symptom, not the disease. Sure, you've removed one person, but you haven't changed what's happening inside you. And until you deal with that, you'll keep living in defense mode, shrinking your life, avoiding conflict, walking on eggshells, trying to build a bubble where no one can touch you. But life doesn't work like that. Toxic people aren't going anywhere. They exist in every city, every workplace, every family. You can't outrun them. You can't delete your way to peace. You can't move far enough to escape people who know how to push your buttons. Because the real problem isn't them. It's how easily they still get to you. And this is where Stoicism offers a brutally honest, but deeply freeing perspective. The Stoics never taught us to avoid people who are difficult. In fact, they believed those people were part of the training. Marcus Aurelius didn't hide from betrayal, gossip, or manipulation. He ruled an empire full of it. And yet, he wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. What he understood, what the Stoics all understood, is that peace isn't found by controlling other people. Peace is found by controlling how you let them affect you. See, the real battle isn't out there. It's in here, your mind. That's why cutting someone off isn't the real solution. Because even when they're gone, you're still fighting them in your head. You replay conversations. You wonder if you did the right thing. You feel guilty. You feel angry. You keep them alive inside you long after they've left your life. That's why the same pattern keeps showing up. Because you never really took your power back. You just ran from the discomfort. And until you face that discomfort, until you build the kind of inner strength the Stoics talked about, the kind that doesn't flinch, doesn't react, doesn't crumble under pressure, you'll keep finding yourself in the same cycle, just with different faces. But today, something changes, because I'm going to show you what they never wanted you to figure out. Not how to cut people off, but how to cut off their power over your mind. That's how you really win. Number 2, the real problem is not them, it's you giving them power. It's easy to believe that the person standing in front of you, the manipulator, the critic, the guilt tripper, is the enemy. It feels natural to put all the blame on them. After all, they're the ones playing games, pushing your buttons, making you doubt yourself. But the Stoics would challenge you to look deeper. They would ask you to stop pointing the finger outward and start looking inward. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who faced betrayal, corruption, and treachery in his own palace, wrote something that changes the entire conversation. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Let that sink in for a second. Because what he's really saying is that no one, not even the most toxic person alive, has real control over you. The only thing they have is the control you hand over to them. See, toxic people aren't magicians. They don't have superpowers. They can't read your mind or control your thoughts. What they can do, however, is influence how you choose to respond. They know exactly which words to use, which looks to give, which buttons to push, because they've studied you. And every time you react, every time you snap, get defensive, or break down, you reinforce their power. But here's what they never expect. They never expect you to wake up to the game they're playing. They never expect you to realize that the power they seem to have is borrowed. And the moment you stop giving them a reaction, they lose everything. Think about it like this. Imagine someone trying to hand you a bag of poison. You don't have to take it. You don't have to drink it. You don't even have to touch it. You can choose to let it fall to the ground and walk away untouched. That's what emotional mastery looks like. That's what the Stoics trained for. Not to avoid difficult people, but to stand in front of them, fully aware of the game, and choose not to play. And here's something that might blow your mind. Toxic people have no real power. None. Not unless you hand it to them. They can't actually do anything to you unless you let them into your mind. That's where the real battle is happening. Not in the argument, not in the silent treatment, not in the manipulation, but in the space between your ears. And once you understand that, you stop fighting them and start mastering yourself. Number 3, their only weapon is your reaction. Toxic people only have one real weapon, and it's not their words. It's not their threats. It's not even their manipulation. Their weapon is your reaction. That's it. They don't win because they're smarter than you. They don't win because they have more power. They win because you hand them control every single time you get emotional, every time you try to defend yourself, every time you fall for the same trap you've fallen for before. Think about the last time someone pushed your buttons. They threw out some petty insult. They twisted something you said. They acted like the victim. And before you even realized it, you were right back in the fight, explaining, defending, raising your voice, trying to prove yourself to someone who had already decided you were wrong no matter what you said. That's how they win. Not because they're right, but because they get you hooked. Because the moment you lose control, you give them exactly what they want, your energy. And here's The part they never expect. You waking up to the game they're playing. You seeing the pattern for what it really is. You realizing you've been handing over your peace for nothing. Let me give you a real-world example that proves this in action. Keanu Reeves. You've probably heard his story. The loss he's faced. The lies the media has spread. The attacks on his private life, and yet, he never claps back. He never explodes. He never gives anyone the satisfaction of seeing him lose his peace. He stays calm. He stays composed. He stays untouchable, and that's why people respect him. Not just for his movies, but for his emotional discipline. Toxic people thrive on chaos. They live for the moment you snap. They feed on your frustration, your anger, your need to be understood. They push you, not because they have a point, but because they want to watch you lose control. But when you don't react, when you keep your peace, when you give them nothing to feed on, they panic. And you've seen it happen. The moment you stay calm, they push harder. They insult you more, they play dirtier, and you start to wonder, am I losing? Should I fight back? But that's the trap. The fact that they're escalating means they're losing their grip. It means they're getting desperate. It means you're winning because their only power is your reaction. And the moment you stop giving it to them, they lose everything. Number 4, becoming emotionally untouchable. If you really want to win this battle, you have to understand something that almost nobody talks about. You don't defeat toxic people by yelling louder. You don't win by explaining yourself better. And you definitely don't win by getting them to admit they're wrong, because they never will. You win the moment you stop playing their game altogether. See, toxic people aren't just looking for conflict. They're dependent on it. Chaos isn't just something they enjoy. It's the oxygen they breathe. It's what keeps them feeling in control. When you get emotional, when you argue, when you defend yourself, you're feeding that system. You're keeping their game alive. But here's where Stoic wisdom gives you an advantage they never see coming. Epictetus, a man who went from slavery to becoming one of the greatest Stoic philosophers in history, once said that you should stand like a rock being battered by waves, unmoved, unshaken. Not because the waves stop coming, but because you've trained yourself to stand still while they crash all around you. That's the kind of strength toxic people can't handle. When they throw their worst at you, and you give them nothing. When they try to provoke you, and you stay silent. When they push every button you have, and you refuse to flinch. And here's what might surprise you. When you stop reacting, they don't always back off right away. In fact, they often push harder. They escalate. They insult you more. They raise the stakes. Why? Because they can feel their grip slipping. They know their tactics aren't working anymore, and that terrifies them. But that's not the moment to fight back. That's the moment to double down on your calm. Because when you stop defending yourself, when you stop trying to explain your worth, when you stop engaging with someone who has already decided they're not interested in understanding, you take back all the power they once held over you. And in that moment, something incredible happens. You force them to face the one thing they've been running from all along, themselves. Their own emptiness, their own insecurity, their own brokenness. You don't need to fight them, you don't need to prove them wrong. You don't even need to explain why you're done. You just need to stop giving them access to your emotional world. And when you do, you become something they can't manipulate, can't control, and can't touch. You become untouchable, because the strongest person in the room isn't the one yelling, It's the one who stays calm while everyone else loses their mind. Number 5. Stop feeding the fire. Every time you react, every time you try to defend yourself, you're doing exactly what they want. You're feeding the fire, and the more you feed it, the bigger it grows. Toxic people don't stop because they've won some argument. They stop when you stop giving them fuel. Think of it like this: a fire can only burn as long as you keep throwing wood on it. Without fuel, it dies. It doesn't matter how hot the flames are, they can't last forever if you stop feeding them. That's exactly how toxic people operate. They survive on your energy, your anger, your frustration, your confusion. Take that away, and suddenly they've got nothing left. And this isn't just theory. You've seen it happen. Maybe you've even lived it. The more you react, the more they come back for more. The more you explain, the more they twist your words. The more you try to prove your side, the more they make you the villain. That's why staying silent feels so unnatural at first. You want to defend yourself. You want to be heard. You want to set the record straight. But here's the truth you need to accept. They don't care about your explanation. They aren't looking for understanding. They're looking for control. And every time you take the bait, you give it to them. Let me give you another real-world example. Think about how people admire someone like Keanu Reeves. It's not just his success on screen. It's the way he moves through life without getting pulled into public battles. He's been targeted by the media. He's faced personal losses. He's had his name dragged through headlines. And yet, he never fires back. He never explains himself. He never feeds the fire. And because of that, the fire burns out on its own. Toxic people are no different. They'll try everything to pull you back in: guilt, pity, anger, shame. They'll press every button they can find. But if you give them nothing, no reaction, no defense, no explanation, the fire dies. Slowly, yes, but it dies. So here's your move. Starve their game. Stop feeding it with your words. Stop feeding it with your emotions. Stop feeding it with your time. Because when you stop feeding the fire, it has no choice but to burn out. Number 6. The lie that keeps you hooked. Let's talk about the trap that keeps most people stuck. The lie you've probably told yourself more than once. The belief that if you just explain yourself one more time, if you just find the right words, the right tone, the right moment, they'll finally get it. That they'll finally see how much they're hurting you. That they'll finally change. But deep down, you already know. They won't. Because toxic people aren't confused. They aren't clueless. They aren't sitting there thinking, "Wow, I had no idea I was making you feel this way." No, they know exactly what they're doing. They just don't care. And that's the part that hurts the most. Because while you've been busy trying to save the relationship, they've been busy using that effort to keep you on the hook. Every time you explain, they twist your words. Every time you defend yourself, they flip the story. Every time you show them patience, they take it as permission to keep going. They don't want peace. They don't want resolution. What they want is control. Control over your time. Control over your emotions. Control over your mind. And the more you try to reason with them, the more power you give them. It feels like you're doing the right thing, trying to make them understand. But really, you're just feeding the cycle they depend on. You explain, they twist, you defend, they play the victim. And it goes around and around until you're emotionally drained and nothing ever changes. This is exactly what Epictetus warned us about. He said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." What he meant is simple but brutal. They might be pushing the buttons, but you're the one handing them the remote. You're the one stepping back into the same game, expecting a different outcome. Let's be honest here, you already know who they are. You already know what they do. You already know how this ends. So the real question is, why are you still playing? The longer you stay in that cycle, the more you teach them that their manipulation works. And every second you spend trying to convince them to care is a second you're stealing from your own peace. It's time to stop trying to fix them. It's time to stop trying to win them over. It's time to stop explaining yourself to people who have already shown you they aren't listening. Because here's the truth that will set you free: they aren't confused. They've never been confused. They just don't care. Number 7, real detachment happens in the mind. Most people think that walking away is the end of the story, that once you cut them off, block their number, or move on with your life, you've won. But here's the truth. Nobody tells you physical distance means nothing if they still live in your head. You might never speak to them again. You might never cross paths. But if you're still replaying old conversations, still overthinking what you could have said, still wondering if they're talking about you behind your back, they still own space in your mind. They still have you in their grip. And the worst part, that's exactly what they want. Because toxic people don't need to be physically present to control you. They just need you to keep carrying them in your thoughts. They need you stuck in that mental loop, replaying, reanalyzing, regretting. You've probably heard advice like, just block them and move on. And maybe you've tried that. But let's be honest. Blocking someone doesn't block the guilt. It doesn't block the second guessing. It doesn't block the voice in your head that keeps asking, what if I handled it wrong? What if they were right about me? Real freedom doesn't come from blocking their number. It comes from blocking their influence, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That's what real detachment looks like. And it's something the Stoics understood deeply. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal in his own palace. He couldn't block his enemies. He couldn't go no contact with people who stood in his court. But he trained himself to let go internally. He reminded himself that he owned his mind, and that no one could live there rent-free unless he allowed it. You can do the same. Take Oprah Winfrey, for example. She grew up surrounded by people who doubted her, who told her she'd never make, who tried to keep her small. She didn't just walk away from those voices, she refused to let them echo in her mind. She didn't waste her life trying to prove them wrong. She built her peace. She built her power. And she did it by letting go mentally, not just physically. Because here's the truth, you're not really free until you stop the replay. Until you stop reliving their words. Until you stop feeding the guilt. Until you stop giving energy to people who have already shown you they don't deserve a single second more of your life. So ask yourself, are they still living in your head? Are they still pulling your strings from a distance? Or are you ready to cut the final thread, to take back your mind, and finally set yourself free? Because that's the part they fear the most. Not you leaving, not you cutting them off, but you letting them go completely, mind, body, and soul. Number 8, you owe them nothing. If you're someone who feels deeply, someone who cares, someone who doesn't like leaving things unfinished, this might be one of the hardest lessons you'll ever learn. You don't owe toxic people anything. Not your time, not your kindness, not your explanations, not even one more conversation. But let's be real, if you've been conditioned to be the bigger person, it feels almost wrong to just walk away, doesn't it? You've probably been told your whole life that you should keep trying, That cutting ties makes you selfish. That standing your ground makes you heartless. That choosing peace for yourself somehow makes you the bad guy. But none of that is true. The Stoics understood this long before we did. Seneca, one of the most brutally honest Stoic philosophers, wrote that life is short, and nothing is more tragic than wasting it on people who drain your soul. You weren't born to carry the weight of other people's dysfunction. You weren't put here to fix people who refuse to fix themselves. Your life isn't a never-ending project for other people to work out their issues on. And yet, that's exactly how they've trained you to feel. Toxic people are masters at making you feel like you're the one who owes them something. One more talk, one more explanation, one more second chance. They guilt you into staying. They shame you into explaining. They pressure you into thinking that leaving makes you cold or uncaring. But you don't owe them a thing. Not because you're heartless, but because they've already shown you who they are. They've shown you that they're not willing to change. They've shown you that they're not interested in peace. They're only interested in control. And here's something they never wanted you to figure out. You were never the one who needed them. It was always the other way around. They needed your attention. They needed your energy. They needed your willingness to keep coming back again and again, even when they gave you nothing in return. But the moment you stop giving, the moment you stop showing up, the moment you stop feeling guilty for choosing yourself, that's the moment you finally take back everything they've been stealing from you. You don't owe them your time. You don't owe them your kindness. You don't owe them your energy. The only thing you owe is yourself, your peace, your freedom, your life, and you have every right to protect it. Number 9, what you're actually letting go of. Let's be honest, walking away feels heavy. It feels like you're giving something up. It feels like you're losing. After all, you've probably told yourself things like, "But we've been friends for years. But they're family. But I've invested so much time trying to fix this." That's how they keep you stuck, by making you believe that if you walk away, you're losing something valuable. That if you let go, you're giving up on something that matters. But stop and ask yourself, what exactly are you holding on to? Are you really holding on to love? Are you really holding on to peace? Or are you holding on to stress, manipulation, and emotional exhaustion? Because the truth is, you're not losing anything worth keeping. What you're actually letting go of is chaos. You're letting go of walking on eggshells. You're letting go of constantly doubting yourself. You're letting go of the anxiety that shows up every time their name pops up on your phone. And here's something most people never realize. When you finally let go, you're not just making space in your life. You're making space in your mind. Space for clarity. Space for peace. Space for people who actually deserve to be there. Think about someone like Michael Jordan. He didn't become one of the greatest athletes of all time by holding on to toxic management, bad coaches, or people who tried to limit him. He walked away from people who didn't value him. And every time he did, he came back stronger, more focused, more unstoppable. And you can do the same. Letting go isn't giving up. It's not failure. It's not weakness. It's freedom. It's choosing yourself over the cycle. It's choosing peace over chaos. It's choosing to stop carrying what was never yours to carry in the first place. So ask yourself, what are you really losing? The stress, the pain, the emotional roller coaster? That's not loss, that's liberation. And you have permission to let it all go without apology. Number 10. turning pain into power. Every moment you've spent being hurt by them, every sleepless night you've spent replaying their words, every tear you've shed over someone who didn't deserve you, it wasn't wasted. It wasn't pointless. It wasn't the end of your story, because that pain, it can become your power. The Stoics believed that every obstacle in life is an opportunity. They called it, the obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius didn't just write those words to sound poetic, he lived them. He faced betrayal, loss, and constant pressure as Emperor of Rome. But instead of breaking under the weight of it all, he used it to sharpen his character, to strengthen his discipline, to become something bigger than the chaos around him, and you can do the same. Toxic people think they've broken you. They think they've left a mark so deep you'll never recover. But here's what they don't see coming. You turning every insult, every betrayal, every manipulation into fuel. Fuel to rebuild yourself. Fuel to sharpen your focus. Fuel to rise higher than they ever imagined you could. Look back at every time you doubted yourself because of them. Every time they made you feel small. Every time they made you question your worth. And now imagine using that exact same energy, not to stay stuck, but to rise, to grow, to build a life so unshakable that they can't even reach you anymore. Because here's the truth, they wanted you weak, they wanted you second-guessing yourself. They wanted you stuck in the cycle, playing their game forever. But they failed. Because the person you're becoming right now, the one who's learning, growing, standing taller with every step, that's the real you. The version they tried to keep small. The version they were afraid you'd discover. The version they never wanted you to become, so take the pain they gave you and turn it into power they'll never understand. That's the part they'll never recover from. And that's how you win, without ever needing revenge. The truth is, toxic people don't really win when you cut them off. They don't win when you walk away in anger. They don't win when you block them and still carry the weight of it in your mind. They win when you keep playing their game, when you keep explaining yourself, when you keep hoping they'll finally understand. But the moment you stop playing, the moment you stop feeding the fire, the moment you stop giving them space in your thoughts, that's the moment they lose forever. And here's the part they'll never admit. Your peace. Your ability to move on without them. Your refusal to let them control another second of your life. That's their worst nightmare. So let them watch. Let them wonder how they lost their grip. Let them sit exactly where they are while you build something they can never touch again, because that's the victory they never saw coming. If this message spoke to you, if it hit you where you needed it the most, do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me which part spoke the loudest to you. I'd love to hear your story, because at the end of the day, your peace is your power. Your mind is your fortress, and from this moment on, you're untouchable.